Life will always bring you on a roller coaster ride. I'm navigating through each and every day and loving what is and what the future may hold. My past has given me amazing memories and untold stories, and at times feeling of worry and hardship, which I now see as part of my life journey. Remember, show up, and if you fail, that's okay. Tomorrow will bring a new day and new ideas. I've had the privilege to spend time and interview some amazing leaders over the years. As they share their stories of life and business, I find out what makes them the people they are. I'm honoured to share their stories with you.
Are you being authentic and unique in everything you do, or are you living a life that others expect of you? It's time to step up and shine. Be the real you, stir that great awakening inside, and trust the process. Want to know how you can do this? Go to joedolton.ie/discover.
On this week's show, we have Jeffrey Olsen. Jeffrey is a best-selling author who inspires audiences internationally with his intriguing story of perseverance and inner strength. After a horrific automobile accident took the lives of his wife and youngest son, also inflicting multiple life-threatening injuries to Jeff, including the amputation of his left leg, he found the courage to survive over 18 surgeries to eventually heal both physically and emotionally, to thrive in his career, community contributions, and studies. Among all of Jeff's accomplishments, he is most proud of and most fulfilled by simply being a husband, father, and friend. If you would like to be a sponsor of Breakthrough Brands, please contact Joe at jdc.ie.
Jeff Olsen, welcome to Breakthrough Brands. How are you?
I'm doing so well, my friend. It's so good to be with you.
You have an amazing story. Absolutely amazing. I came across a video of an interview that you did on YouTube, and you had me fully engaged. How humble you were and how genuine when telling your story. And you do have a story.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say, Joseph. I do have a story. I think everyone has a story. I mean, everybody has a story. Everyone has things that happen, and yeah, I've had some things happen to me for sure.
I want to ask you a question before we get into the accident and how your life changed there. What sort of person were you before that all happened?
You know, I was a good person, but I was very driven. I was in business. I come from a marketing background, so I was, running an advertising agency and chasing money and maybe even chasing awards. I mean, the Clio Awards and the One Show Awards, and it was about. I think for me it was about accolades. I had been a Division I athlete, a football player, and so. I was very red personality, very driven, very take charge, take names, and I was also very committed to being right. I was very, very committed to being right. And, I was kind, I was compassionate, but in some ways I found myself often judgmental, and...
Ego-driven?
Oh, yes. I mean, the ego, and I didn't even know what the ego was then. I mean, in hindsight now, I was completely ego-driven.
You had a terrible accident. You could say that you fell asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, I believe I dozed off, and that's a tough one. Even now, it's like, wow. But yeah, I believe I dozed off at the wheel. I swerved to the right, I overcorrected and lost control of the car, and it ended up rolling. Not off the road, but down the road, and I had set the cruise control at 75, so it was at a high speed as well.
And from there, a new chapter began for you and your family.
Very, very much so. I mean, the accident, they say the car rolled at least 6 to 8 times. I blacked out for most of that, but when the car came to a stop, I was completely conscious. And the first thing I heard or was aware of is my 7-year-old son. The whole family was in the car. It was me, my wife, and our 2 boys. And I heard my 7-year-old son crying hysterically in the back seat. And so I thought, oh gosh, I've got to get to my boy. I've got to get to my son. And yet there was this relief of, oh, he's okay because he was crying. And as a father, you hear that cry. He may be hurt, but he's okay, right? So that's when I realized that I couldn't move. I wanted to get to him, but I found myself pinned, and I couldn't tell whether it was to the seat or the floorboard. I was completely disoriented. I had no idea of my injuries. I knew I was struggling to breathe. There was excruciating pain. I felt as though I was losing consciousness. I was trying to hold on. And yet I wasn't aware of my injuries. What had actually happened is that both of my legs had been crushed and somewhat shattered. My left leg was eventually amputated above the knee. My back had been damaged. My rib cage was damaged. My lungs were collapsing. My right arm had almost been torn off, and then the seatbelt had cut through me and torn, through my abdomen and down through my lower hip, and had ruptured all of my intestines. I had no idea. I just knew my son was crying, and I wanted to get to my son, but that's when the brutal reality hit that no one else was crying. And that's when I became keenly aware that Tamra, my wife, had passed. She was killed instantly in the car crash, and also my youngest son, who was just a toddler, Griffin, had also lost his life in the crash. And I can't even describe the hell in that moment, knowing half the family was gone. I was driving the car. I had a hysterical 7-year-old that I couldn't get to. And that was the worst moment, maybe, of my entire existence.
I feel your pain. I apologise for bringing it up again.
It's all right, Joseph. I mean, it's been 20 years. I couldn't speak of it for almost a decade. I mean, I really just couldn't even speak their names without crying and falling apart. But enough time has passed that I'm quite willing to go there, because there is purpose in it. Some incredible things happened. I mean, I feel in some ways, had the profound things not happened, I may have never recovered. I may have been strung out on some street corner somewhere. Who knows? But what actually happened is in that darkest time that I've outlined, when I'm in absolute terror, suddenly there was this calmness. It's like suddenly there was calm, and it felt as though light came to me. I felt as though I was surrounded in light, and the light was tangible. It was like comforting. It was like comforting me in this traumatic moment, and it felt as if I began to rise above the scene of the accident. And in some ways I was quite shocked. I'm like, what's happening? And then the pain was gone, and I could breathe. And I thought, oh gosh, and am I okay? How can I be okay? I was somewhat confused at all of this. And as I came to terms with, wow, I'm really okay, and I seemed to be suspended in this light, if you will. And then I realized Tamra, my wife, who had passed at the accident, and I don't want to be morbid about this, but she had reclined her seat back to go to sleep, and therefore the seatbelt had not restrained her properly, and she was sleeping at the time of the accident, as was Griffin. I do find comfort that they passed in their sleep, basically, but because of the way Tamra had laid her seat back, she had, and I was aware of this at the scene of the accident, she had suffered some head trauma, which is what took her life. But in this light, and I give those details for contrast. So here I've risen above it, and she's in this light with me, and she's gorgeous. She's magnificent. There's no head trauma. She's absolutely beautiful. And yet she's emphatic. We're having a conversation about the fact that I can't stay, that I really need to go back. And you know, we're conversing, and yet it was the most intense conversation. It's almost like it was accentuated from anything in this realm. But she was emphatic that I go back, that it wasn't my time, and that also, I had a 7-year-old son that I knew was in the back seat of that car. And I learned a lot about choice, because there I was looking at the woman I loved more than life, also knowing I had a child, in the backseat of that car, and I made a choice, and the choice was to come back.
So you died?
Well, I certainly left my body because I suppose you could say I died in the accident as well, and was sent back. I mean, I have friends that laugh and say you got kicked out. And yet the interesting, poignant thing is the conversation with my wife, the person I loved more than anything. And she's like, you've got to go back. She was emphatic. And coming back was an interesting thing. I mean, as I made the choice, and I should add, I got to say goodbye. That was something that comforted me, and I hesitated to share that for years, because so many of us lose loved ones and never get to say goodbye. But I did say goodbye and made the choice to come back. And I didn't have to figure out how to do it. It was mere intention. My consciousness is I'm going back. And as I did so, I found myself in a hospital, wandering about a hospital or moving about a hospital. I have no concept of time in this bubble of light, in this goodbye. I was later told that, yes, people arrived at the scene. Emergency services were called. They extricated me from the car. They rushed me to a local hospital. My injuries were so severe, they knew they could do nothing for me, and I was life-flighted to a level 1 trauma center in a larger metropolitan city, which was, about 3 hours away. But, of course, the life flight was much quicker than 3 hours. I had no idea of any of that. All I knew is I had crashed the car. Spencer, my 7-year-old, basically walked away from the accident. He was banged up a bit, but physically he was okay. Emotionally, he thought he had lost his whole family. I was life-flighted to the level 1 trauma center, and all I knew is I'd crashed the car. I'd said the most profound goodbye I would ever say. And here I was wandering about the hospital, seeing the doctors and the nurses and the patients and the families of the patients, and yet I was seeing them in such an intense way. I mean, everyone I looked at, I knew them. I knew them as well as I knew myself. I knew their love, their hate, their passions, their motivations, their feelings. I was feeling their life as if they were me and as if I was them. There was this absolute oneness and connectedness. And it was love. I mean, everyone I saw, and it didn't matter who they were or what they had done or what they hadn't done. We were connected, and I loved them, and I felt them, and I knew them, and I was having this profound experience until I finally came upon a body or a man laying there on the gurney that I didn't feel anything from, which I thought was odd. And that's when I stepped forward to take a look and realized, oh my gosh, that's me. I suppose that's the moment that it really hit me that I'm out of my body. I'm dead. There's my body laying there. And yet it's not me. I'm having this profound connected experience, but there's the skin suit that I ran about this realm in, and it was quite a poignant moment.
It's fascinating. One thing I'm just taking a note there, when you say you felt the love for everyone as you walked around when you're having this out-of-body experience. And there is the truth of it. We are all connected.
Yes. Yes, I mean, it was it changed me forever. All those judgments and competition and aggression and red personality went out the window when I had this experience, and I felt everyone around me. Judgments and comparisons went out the window, and I realized we are one. And I was feeling it in such a way. Now, I had grown up in a conservative Christian home. I mean, we read the Bible, and I actually had a biblical verse in this experience come to my consciousness. It was the famous verse where Jesus said, "Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me," which I used to think was a nice verse about being nice, but boy, I was experiencing something much different. Now I realized they were me. And I realized that perhaps what he meant was that very thing, that he saw himself as no different or no better than the naked beggar in the street or the person in prison who, there was this oneness that gave a whole new depth to some of those things that as a child and, biblical verse meant something so much different, but suddenly it was expanded to an extent that I'm like, wow, they are me. I am them, and we are one, and there's nothing but love in this scenario.
We are a spiritual body having a human experience, and we are here not as a lesson, but to create. And in the journey, we are going through everything in our lives. If you're having a really bad day, you've created it. But the reason why you're having such a bad day is so you can experience the good day. Because
yes, I couldn't agree more, Joseph. I mean, I had other experience. I mean, I was in the hospital for months. I had 18 surgeries. I felt as if I had one foot in this realm and one foot in the next realm for some time. I had other visitations to that other side. I had other things happen. And perhaps the most profound, I literally, well, I got to go, I went back in that other realm and I saw my wee son. And I was able to say goodbye to him, which still makes me weep, the profound thing that happened. And as I held my little boy, I felt a presence come up behind me. And this is so pertinent to what you just said. Here I am holding my boy in that realm. I've left my body again, but I'm holding him, and it feels very physical. And I feel this presence coming up behind me. And I began to become fearful because it's the presence is so overwhelming that I know I'm in the presence of God, or what I call God. I mean, it was so intense, and yet it was so personal. And as I held my little boy, I began to weep, and I began to have that guilt, just magnify again, thinking my little boy died. He's here because I crashed the car, and I had grown up believing that life was a test, as you say, that God was going to judge me, and here I knew I was in the presence of God, and here was my little boy, and all the guilt of having lost control of the car emerged, and I had the thought, I hope I can be forgiven. That was the thought, and as I had that thought, and this almost felt physical too, I felt those divine arms wrap around me and my little boy, and then there was just this download. There was this download of the most pure, unconditional love. And I was told, and not necessarily with words, I was told with like every energy of everything there is, there's nothing to forgive. Everything is in perfect order. And I was fearful in that judgment. And the interesting thing is this divine being communicated to me, that's your judgment of things, not ours. Life is a gift. It's not a test. Everything that you experience, you created. This was for the expansion of your soul, and Tamara and Griffin and everyone involved, even Spencer, you had some type of contract, some type of agreement. Agreement, yeah, that this would all happen for the expansion of your soul. And I felt as if the entire universe was celebrating and honoring my silly life. I mean, my life, and even the wreck, and even all that was happening, because it was the creation of my eternal soul, and the entire universe supported it out of unconditional love. And the reality was there was no death. I mean, there I was holding my little boy, and there I was in the arms of God, and it's as if life, this realm, became this crazy stage where we come and play the roles we play, but simply to remember that we are light, we are love, we are divine, we are eternal, we are all those things, and yet we forget. And that's the duality you mentioned. I love what you just said, because, yeah, we live in this duality, and we have all this chaos, but otherwise, how would we know the joy? How would we know the light? We're experiencing what we're not, that perhaps so we can fully embrace what we truly are.
I call it the yin and yang, and that's why we have it. How can you experience love if you've never experienced being brokenhearted? How can you experience success if you've never failed? And the harder you experience one thing, the more joy and greater the other. So in saying that, your yin and yang, you really fell off the cliff with that experience that you had. And yes, it was an agreement. I totally agree that when we all come down and when we're born and we're on earth, we have made those contracts with all those people in our lives so we can experience, create what we have. And the gift that we've been given is free will, free choice. And the free will could be to go left or right. You could have been given a choice not to fall asleep at the wheel. You could have been given a choice to stay there an extra day. But what happened opened up your life and your experience moving forward. In your opinion, what did you feel was the main exercise that you got from that whole experience?
I love that, Joseph, and it's such a profound question. You know what I walked away with in the end, now that it's 20 years after the fact? Compassion. Yeah. Compassion. I mean, it's like I have empathy, and empathy is a good thing. I mean, and forgiveness, compassion for myself. I mean, that's the crazy thing. As I held my little boy, I was given a choice. This divine being told me, well, you can be mad, at God or the universe for what happened all your life, and that's okay. Or you can be mad at yourself your whole life and beat yourself up because you were driving the car. But I was actually given the choice as well. It's all about choice. I was given the choice to give my son back, to literally let him go, to hand him over, and to exercise my free will in the situation. And I did. In all that love and peace, I was able to kiss him on the face and pass him over, and then I left that realm. And I woke up back in the hospital bed, back to everything. But, people have asked me, well, what's God's will? I mean, it must have been God's will that you crashed, or God's will that you survived. And I'm like, God's will is free will. Yeah. God's will is free will. We are here to create. I love what you're saying, and I couldn't agree more. We are here to create and to be accountable and to remember and enjoy the experiences, even the hard ones, or difficult and challenging ones.
Every thought behind every thought behind every thought behind every thought boils down to either love and fear.
Aye, yes.
And a lot of people there'll be some people listening to this show and they'll be going, oh, here we go, what these two guys are going on about.
Yeah, I get that.
But that's it. Look, you resonate towards who gets it and who doesn't get it, and who will listen to it and might start them on their journey themselves. The greatest gift that we have is our mind. Not our brain, but our mind. And our mind creates everything. People will create, and clarity is the greatest gift that we've been given. That if you can think about something and don't take your ideas off that, the manifestation or whatever you have. So you have thought, which is word, and then is action. And this is relating into your life, that if you can focus on belief, knowing, trust that what you were doing is right. And that's why I asked, what is it the greatest gift that you got from this? And you said compassion. And by you living that and knowing that, that's going to ooze out of you, and you're going to then share that with other people.
It's true. I mean, I never had any intention of talking about any of this. And I certainly didn't have an intention of writing a book. I've written a book, Knowing. Knowing is the title, one word. And it is that knowing, that everything's in divine order, that I'm the creator of my own existence here. I can never guess what might happen, but I can always be the creator of how I experience it and how I react to it. And yes, some things will be hurtful and challenging, and that's perfect for the growth of my soul. And some things will be joyful and loving, and that's perfect for my soul. I mean, I see, now, like I'll watch a sunrise, and I'll tear up. I'll think, gosh, I will never see this sunrise in this way, in this moment, ever again, as long as I live, even beyond this realm. And I think, what a gift to be here and to be now, and to know what I know, and yet to be continually learning. It's fascinating.
If I was to give you a magic wand, and at a click of it, you could go back to where you were and none of this would have happened, would you do that, or would you want the journey?
Wow. Oh, Joseph, you're so good. I wouldn't be who I am now had this not happened. I would not be who I am. Yeah, so I suppose even in hindsight, gosh, it's tempting, but life has rolled on. I mean, my gosh, I fell in love again. I remarried. We adopted children. We recreated a family. We moved on. Boy, I'd love to have two legs and go for a nice run, again. But, even at that, I was always running. I mean, now I slow down. I walk. I take time to smell the flowers, if you will. And maybe there's purpose in that as well,
It's a whole new chapter in your life.
I do, and I have these angels. I mean, I know, here again, people are going to listen and say, wow, what? But yeah, I mean, I don't know that I lost my wife and child. I mean, they're no longer in this realm, but gosh, I have two of the most powerful guardian angels that have guided me or nudged me this way or that way, or who have brought into my consciousness choices, even with Tanya, my current wife, to remarry, to trust and love again, and to embrace a relationship without fear of losing it, without fear of what had happened.
Jeff, it's. I believe that you don't die, you move on. And when people have close to me who have passed away, I mourn that I'm no longer going to have that conversation with them. But that's the human aspect of me is mourning it. But the other part of me is they're here with me now anyway. And some people might find this a bit bizarre, but I kind of, when it is my turn to go, I won't be frightened, and I'll be kind of going, okay, now let me see what's happening on the other side. Let me see the big picture here, why it's all happening, and I can have that ha-ha moment when I'm up there or down there or wherever energy is. Yeah, I don't mean hell. I mean wherever, because we are energy, and energy, you can't remove energy, and it just disperses into something else.
Yes, no, and it's beautiful. I have no fear of death. I mean, sometimes, Tanya, my current wife, thinks I'm sometimes morbid. It's like, oh, I'm ready any old time, any old time. But here again, maybe heaven's right here. If we embrace it, maybe there is nowhere to go. If we're aware of the angels around us, and if we're aware of the gift life is, gosh, maybe we're already there. Maybe we're in heaven every day if we just embrace it.
What would be the greatest message you could share with people in their lives? If you had one sentence, like in business we call it the elevator pitch.
I could probably boil that down to two words, and it's because I was given these words at one of those dark nights of the soul after the accident, when I wondered how will I ever do this? Why did this all happen? How will I ever get by? And I've also had Tamara, my wife who passed, reiterate these things in a dream or a visitation or vision. But the two words are choose joy. Choose joy. Everything's a choice. It's up to me to choose joy and to embrace joy and to look at what I'm learning and everything instead of why did it happen and, oh, this is awful,
Yeah, I even find myself now, I'm on a journey probably about 18 years, and I learn something new every day, and it's for me now, I've learned to replace those negative thoughts with positive, and I keep joy, and you forget about these things. It's because your subconscious mind kicks in. And the one thing I notice is if you can focus on the moment and not trying to, and why everyone gets stressed and why everyone suffers from anxiety and why everyone is having a really shitty day, because they're not thinking of what they can do now, they're thinking of what they need to do in a minute or an hour. Let me just focus on now, and focusing on now, let me just choose something good about now. Joy. So let's choose joy about what I'm having now.
This is a silly little example, but I was on the road, and I had someone cut me off, and I felt that anger come up, and I wanted to, shake my fist and curse. And I thought, isn't that beautiful that I can feel that I can feel anger? I'm alive, and then it seemed to subside. I chose love or chose joy, and suddenly I could just wave at the guy and move on. All was well, and I realized too, it's like he's in a hurry. He's in a bigger hurry than I am. I can send love and light and just wish him well. But isn't it beautiful that I get the breadth and depth of emotion, and the feeling of being here?
The reason why I asked you, Jeff, was because for me, my show is I'm going through a very depth spiritual journey at the moment, and for me, when I told people about what was happening, it was like me coming out of the closet, okay, because hiding it for so many years. Yeah. And I really kind of understand that there's a lot of times when you do kind of go have that ha-ha moment when you have it first, you disengage from the body and the mind, and that's where people, when they get to this, they lose their jobs, or they get in financial crisis, or they get all this thing because they've realised that there's something bigger than them, and they forget that their creation is mind, body and soul, but they only then focusing off on the soul. And for to live in this realm and on earth and to be who we are, we have to have the body and the mind taking the action to do everything. Because it's not all about, I got it, and then sitting on a mountaintop and meditating all day. We still have to provide for our families. We still have to pay the bills. We still have to do everything. But if you're doing it from a conscious feeling and doing it with joy from an inner peace, there is the switch that can change everybody's life. Instead of focusing on the negative, the positive, and going what your inner soul is telling you to do, then your life will change.
I love that. And yes, even coming to work every day. I work, I have a job, and if I can embrace it as, gosh, I'm thankful, I'm grateful I can work. I'm grateful I can still function. I'm thankful and I can take it on joyfully. That's it shifts the energy, and suddenly it's a gift, and it's not a drudgery. Yeah,
it's when something goes wrong, it says, okay, this has happened for a reason. Let me just acknowledge it and move on with it. What's the best business advice that you would give someone who is on a spiritual journey and still want to focus on their business?
Oh, I you ask such good questions. It's a good question. Do what you love. Do what you're passionate about. Do what makes you excited. And then, and this is an interesting two-word thing too. I was up in Portland. There's an ad agency up in Portland, and it's quite it's a famous advertising marketing group. They do all the work for Nike, and they build a legacy around that brand. And then this is my business, so this is work. But if you go in there, in the lobby, they have this huge wall, and it says "Fail harder." And I think it's encouraging people to go for it. And yeah, you're going to fall on your face, but have the courage, to do what you love and to do it with all your heart, and be willing to be wrong or be willing to fail. And somehow in the magic of being willing to fail is where you just might find success.
But here it is. It's if you can really sort of get your head around it, and it's getting the mind to comprehend what's going on, that it is a journey, and you can't screw up. And if you get it wrong this time, you'll have a go in the next life.
Right.
There's the thing that you have to kind of go, oh my God, so it is okay for me to screw up. Yes, because you've asked for it, because you want to experience it.
Yeah, we're simply here to learn. And we learn by experience, and there's going to be all kinds of experience. And then realizing too, I sometimes my head, we're eternal beings. We've always existed. We're always going to exist. But as you've already pointed out, like eternity is nothing more or less than just having right now. What am I doing right now, and what's the energy I'm in right now? And what can I do to make the world a better place, even if it is in those small, simple things, which quite honestly are probably the big things.
I believe our life purpose is to remember.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. I'd have said the same thing.
Yeah, that's what it is. What book would you recommend, apart from your own, to people to read?
Gosh, I'm reading some amazing books. I just finished one called Rules for a Knight, with a K, like a knight in shining armor. And very profound. It was apparently found from an old ancient manuscript coming from your part of the world. And it was rules for a knight, how to live in honor, how to live in joy, and how to make choices that work with your own consciousness. And gosh, I read it in a night. I sat in an evening and spent a couple hours and couldn't put it down. But rules for a knight. That's my big hit lately.
I always say to people, what are your 5 to 7 values that you can offer? Because if you write them down and study them and know they are you, that's how your life will develop.
5 values.
5
would
values.
Be trust. Yeah, it'd be trust, which comes out of integrity and honesty.
Yeah.
Honesty being one with what is.
Humor,
peace, joy. I mean, and I could put love on all of them. All of them are the fruits of love, of loving yourself.
Transparency.
Transparency, collaboration. Openness, sharing. I couldn't do 5, Joseph. I'll have a whole list. I'll have a whole page full of.
Tell me, where can people get your book? Where can people get onto your website? Where can people find you, Jeff?
Oh gosh, I'm on social media, and it's my full name, which is Jeffrey, Jeffery, middle initial C, as in Clyde, after the River Clyde, with Scottish roots, and then Olsen, Olsen. But the best way to get my book is on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and look up Knowing by Jeffrey Olsen, and then the website to find me is Envoy Publishing, ENVOY Publishing. Envoy is French for messenger, and gosh, we're all messengers. We've all got a story, we've all got a message, and as we share those stories, we'll find we have far more in common as divine beings than we'll ever have separate what we think is humanity, right?
Jeff, what song would you like us to play out with?
Oh gosh, play me something by Sinead O'Connor. Play me In This Heart, which was Tamara, my wife who passed. That was one of her favorite songs. In fact, she let me know after she had passed that's what she wanted sung at her services, and we did. We brought a little choir in, and I wasn't able to do it. I shared that from a hospital bed. But play Sinead O'Connor.
Jeffrey Olsen, thank you for coming on to Break Two Brands.
Thank you, Joseph. It's a pleasure to be with you.
In this heart lies for you a lark born only for you, who sings only to you, my love, my love, my love. I am waiting in my arms only for you are only my love, my love, my love.
Are you being authentic and unique in everything you do, or are you living a life that others expect of you? It's time to step up and shine. Be the real you, stir that great awakening inside, and trust the process. Want to know how you can do this? Go to joedolton.ie/discover.